Preseason testing has brought us an enormous amount of data, insight, and overall a better understanding of who is likely to fight for the podium places during the first race, with multiple teams bringing a different car to Bahrain than during the reveal session a couple weeks ago. We straight away saw some unique features on a variety of cars. In this video, we will be talking about the most important information from preseason testing that you need to know before the first race starts in Bahrain. The most important question experts and fans had, including myself, was, who developed the fastest car? When Toto Wolff was asked this question, he said, "It is difficult to say who is the fastest. Many teams are not showing their true performance. We have to wait till the first race to see who is really the fastest. We also haven't shown our true pace yet." So does this mean that we can't make any conclusions after 3 days of testing? The timetables do not lie, just as the problems some teams experienced. In this video, I dive deep into the official lap data Formula One provides and look at multiple interviews given by the drivers and team principals to find out what we learned during the pre-testing days. As usual, most of the attention went out to the designs of the 3 top teams. However, in this case, I want to start with looking at what, in my opinion, was the most surprising team of all. During 3 days of testing, Aston Martin showed an amazing pace in the hands of Fernando Alonso. After a sensitive transfer from Alpine to Aston Martin, many fans and experts wondered if this was going to be another failing transfer of Alonso. However, if we look at the data, we can see that Aston Martin is currently leading the midfield in terms of pace and reliability. On the second test day, Alonso drove over 130 laps. Even more impressive was that during his 14-lap average on the C3 tire, he was on average 0.3 seconds a lap faster than Sainz while driving on the same tire and during the same weather conditions. Now, I will say that it is not clear with how much fuel and in what engine mode both Alonso and Sainz drove, but so far, Aston Martin has been the only team outside of the top 3 that came moderately close to the pace of Red Bull and Ferrari. The AMR23 is also the first car developed by ex-Red Bull aerodynamicist Dan Fallows, who came up with innovative features like a side pod that includes a cliff-like cavity. Furthermore, Aston Martin has heavily focused on improving the airflow of their car to reduce drag and increase top speed. Top speed was a major problem in 2022, as was for most Mercedes-powered cars. Unfortunately, it looks like this will still be a major problem this year, as there is over a 10 kmu difference between Aston Martin and Red Bull and Ferrari. The lack of top speed is also visible at the factory team of Mercedes itself. Hamilton and Russell did a phenomenal job at the end of last season when their car finally became competitive again. After a painful season, Mercedes and their fans had high hopes that 2023 was going to be the year that Mercedes could fight for the championship once more. But is that really the case? After 3 days of testing, a couple interesting points stand out. The most positive point is that Hamilton said that the porpoising issues have been resolved for good now. However, at the same time, Hamilton also addressed where the W14 needs to improve in order to become a title contender. Some of the balance limitations that we had last year are still present. We are working through them, but I am really proud of everyone in the team for continuing to remain positive after a tough year in 2022. Everyone has been doing amazing through the winter to give us a great car to drive. So how did Mercedes do in terms of performance? Based on the timetable, Mercedes is far behind Red Bull and Ferrari. Even on a softer compound, Hamilton was 4/10 off the pace from Red Bull driver Perez. Although we have to take into account fuel levels and engine modes, things don't seem to look good. Even Toto Wolff himself, as well as George Russell, mentioned that they are currently not fast enough to beat Ferrari and Red Bull. Whether that is the truth or just the old sandbagging style that Mercedes used to use a couple years ago, time will tell. However, besides a hydraulic failure on the second day of testing, I also noticed that Mercedes faces a mix of under and oversteer. It seems that the W14 doesn't provide enough rear grip to handle the power once coming out of a corner. But at the same time, whenever Hamilton or Russell enters a slow to medium speed corner like corner 8 or corner 11, it becomes evident that Mercedes still struggles with balance issues and severely understeers. When Toto Wolff was asked where he thinks Mercedes stands, he said the following: "The car is out of balance, and we leave track marks on track when exiting corners. We have to be realistic. Our car isn't good enough at this moment to fight for race wins. The train with Red Bull already left the station." So is there no hope for the Mercedes fans at all? Well, yes, there is. Mercedes seems to perform well in high-speed corners, and we know from last year that the German team is capable of quickly developing their car. What helps them even more is that they have 10% extra CFD and wind tunnel time compared to the start of last year as a result of ending P3 in the championship. So, how did Ferrari and Red Bull do? In terms of reliability and performance, it is clear that both teams are currently ahead of the field. Even if teams are sandbagging, there is no reason to believe that Ferrari or Red Bull end up in the midfield. Why? In both the top speed traps as well as cornering speeds, the team out of Maranello and Milton Keynes top the sheets. Red Bull topped 326 kmu, whereas Ferrari hit 325 kmu. Initially, there was some concern regarding the reliability of the Ferrari engine after last year's debacle, but after completing over 400 laps in 3 days and no significant issues, it seems that Ferrari is in a good place. The latest sources suggest that the improved Ferrari engine brought them 2 to 3 tenths. When Carlos Sainz was asked how the new car feels, he said, "The car feels like an evolution of last year. It feels very similar. We try to improve the good pace of last year and try to improve the weaknesses of last year's car. But although the car feels good, I am still not sure how we compared to other teams. Hopefully we can come closer to Red Bull." So what is it that makes Red Bull the team to beat? What improvements have they brought to their car? It seems that even with the CFD and wind tunnel penalty, Adrian Newey and his team developed another masterpiece of a car. First of all, there is the unique front wing. According to Formula 1.Uno, Red Bull developing a drag-efficient front wing that is so specific to the car that it becomes very difficult to replicate. If we look at the top speeds, which was one of Red Bull's powers last year, we can see that they once again top the top speed table. However, it is the balance and cornering speeds during the long runs that make other teams worried. When Verstappen was asked how the car feels, he said, "It has been the best preseason testing I ever had." Compared to last year's car, this is definitely an improvement. We already hope to see specific data on track that would hopefully correlate with the wind tunnel and simulator. If you see that your setup works straight away, then that is awesome. It has been an absolute pleasure to drive this car. When looking at the onboard cameras, we can see no great outbreaks of over or understeer, and it looks like the car is well balanced. With over 400 laps in 3 days and only one small hydraulic issue, we can also conclude that there are no significant reliability issues with the power unit. The real test will be next week, when no one can hide anymore as the first race approaches. However, with each team driving at least a minimum of 300 laps in 3 days, and therefore gathering a lot of data, we can conclude that Red Bull and Ferrari are very likely to end up in the front of the field. How Mercedes will perform is still a big question mark, as it also depends whether they can solve their setup problems to improve mechanical grip. Aston Martin seems to be the team that made the biggest step forward, whereas McLaren and AlphaTauri have not made a great impression on the experts. Williams seems to have fixed most of their last year balance problems and is positive that they can be a regular point contender. Even Gunther Steiner from Haas has reason to be optimistic, as he said that they had their best ever winter in terms of preparations and car build. Alpine seems to be a dark horse, as they have been focusing mainly on long runs without putting in a serious low-fuel run. When Otmar Safnauer was asked by Viaplay how the car performed, he said, "The numbers are relative. We will see where everyone stands next week, but I am relatively happy, as the numbers from the simulator correlates to what we have seen on track. Eventually, time will tell who sandbagged and who is in serious trouble." If you like this video, please like and subscribe.